the vision of the Black Management Forum is to be the most influential youth organization for young, particularly Black entrepreneurs and professionals within South Africa. It is the duty of those in leadership at the moment to hand over the baton of success, but it's our responsibility to run the race and continue on. The BMF also addresses the missing woman phenomena that is currently occurring in South Africa's top brass.
The founding members of BMF felt that they need to do something to influence and advance the representation of Black professionals at the higher echelons of corporate South Africa at the time. So BMF exists to advance Black managerial leadership, primarily amongst Africans.
One of the ways in which we develop our members is through two management development programs, the Women in Power program and the Young Professional Development program.
In March 2016, BMF and Duke Corporate Education embarked on a partnership to tailor-make the BMF Women in Power program. This program focuses on gender issues as women experience them as they step into leadership and roles of management.
So I'm a millennial and sometimes you struggle in the corporate world, whether it be corporate or government, whichever sector. My journey and experience with the Women in Power program was phenomenal. I learned self-mastery, learning a bit about yourself and how you show up with other people as a manager, learning how to manage up as well as manage down.
What we did was we built a program around these key challenges regarding leading self, others, and commercial acumen.
The Young Professional Development Program equips the BMF young professional with middle management skills. The program is a stepping stone for the development and fast tracking of young corporate athletes and entrepreneurs into accomplished business leaders, thus providing a readily available pool of talent.
We believe that a program like this, thankfully, was conceived 5 years ago by Moses Mashishi, and it was then birthed by Becky Zulu. And at that point in time, we realized that we couldn't do what business schools at that point in time were doing. We base our program on action learning. We base our program on case studies, real-time case studies, because in the corporate South Africa today, we need to solve real problems that we are challenged with.
I said when I went through the training, I had gone through retrenchment, and I'd been with the same company for forever, since straight after matric, and I'm a scientist by profession. So my experience with the program was transformational and catapulted my sense of self-worth and self-confidence and helped me to change my paradigm and perceptions on life and therefore changing my experience of life. But lastly, it also increased my sense of servitude towards the country.
We must have the right mind, the right attitude, be above reproach, our personal integrity and our professional standing. And in the BMF, we call it the BMF type manager, where you can't be caught with your hands in a cookie jar. It starts there. It starts there that we make a pledge to ourselves that never again will participate one way or the other, indirectly or directly, in anything that will compromise the success of this nation.
My humble request today to you, corporate South Africa, is to get behind the BMF, to support us and to support initiatives like BMF Women in Power. I haven't met a single woman who has said to me that this program wasn't relevant, that it wasn't impactful, that it hasn't changed their lives. I am TASNEEM. I'm the Deputy President of the Black Management Forum. I've made my difference, and it's now your turn to do the same.
My name is Hendrina Kanyile. I'm the facilitator of the Black Management Forum Young Professionals Program. I've done my bit. Are you ready to do yours?
This baton in my hand represents the deepest foundations of our organization. It was given to me by the people that have contributed a stone or two in the building of this cathedral called the BMF. And the responsibility from the leadership that is currently at the helm of BMF is to ensure that our organization is a reflection of a society that we want to see forever. And the only way to guarantee the future is by making a contribution to the present, and making a contribution that is meaningful, making a contribution that is impactful, making a contribution that breeds sustainability.
So now, the information is in your hands. The responsibility is on you to take it.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mpho Moseki. I am the current chairperson of Gauteng BMF Province, Gauteng Province BMF. I want to just take time to just welcome you to this session of the BMF Gauteng Women's Leadership Series, where we celebrate women and provide a platform for men and women to learn from great women who have generously agreed to spend time with us and share their journey and lessons from their journey and their expertise. So today's topic is the difference that different makes, the double minority leadership. We know from the latest Commission for Employment Equity report that being female means that you're a minority in the boardroom. And in South Africa, being a Black female means that you're a double minority in the boardroom. So today we'll be learning from a leader on how these challenges, she's overcome these challenges, and on the value that organizations get from leaders such as herself who bring a different perspective. After all, as Maya Angelou put it, you are the sum total of everything that you've ever seen, heard, eaten, smelled, been told, or forgot. It's all there. And so we are in for a treat. The session for today will run as follows. We will have an opening remarks from the Deputy President of the BMF, Ms. TASNEEM FREDERICKS, who is also leading the BMF Gender Desk, the BMF Women Desk. Then we'll hear from our keynote speaker. We'll tell you all about her later. And then we'll have an interactive question and answer session. And then we will close with a vote of thanks. So ladies and gentlemen, let's get into it. Please help me welcome the Deputy President of the BMF, Ms. TASNEEM FREDERICKS, to give her opening remarks.
Good evening, Chair Gauteng. Good evening, Mebasani, and to BMF, you know, our administrators and our technical team. I must just apologize also, my Wi-Fi connectivity is not 110%. So let me just thank you, Mpho, for initiating this. I think it's quite important that if we do not consciously take steps to intentionally intervene in the plight that women, Black women in particular, face in corporate South Africa, we are not going to, you know, we can't be standing in a corner criticizing something and not taking action, because then it means we're complicit in that action against women. So I think it's very important, even if you have an awareness pamphlet, and even if you have, you know, platforms like these where we can share experiences, and I'm very, you know, there's like this warmness in my chest, because there are, you know, we're often told that there's a shortage of these C-suite women, C-suite Black candidates. When we visit corporates as BMF, we actually get told, you know, it's like unicorns. Where are these Black women? Where are they that are so highly educated and skilled and that can contribute in the boardroom and in organizations? And as the BMF, we're here to say that it's an urban legend to say that we do not exist, because we are here. Mebasani, you give us hope and you confirm that we are not imagining that there are Black women who are more than capable.
And I think the important thing for me is just to, when I look at the topic that we're going to be discussing, I don't want to get too much into that, other than to say we acknowledge that Black women face triple oppression. So we have, we have to deal on a daily basis with the fact that we are Black, we deal with the fact that we are women, and we have to deal with the fact that we get paid less to do an equal job. And I think as leaders, we need to take a hard look at what gets in the way of promoting women in their organizations. And clearly, there's an issue of unconscious bias, that women don't belong in senior level positions. And it's imperative that organizations change the way they make hiring and promotion decisions so that they ensure that eligible Black women are given serious consideration. And those people who, we live in a patriarchal society, so those decision makers need to pause and ask themselves, are we succumbing to unconscious bias? Are we automatically giving the nod to a man when there's an equally competent woman in the room? And I think that when women are given that confidence, when women are given that role, I think during COVID more so than in any other instance, we've seen that the countries that are leading the fight against COVID-19 are countries that are led by women. So without further ado, I'm going to hand back over to you, Mpho. I say welcome to all the participants this evening. Welcome to our guest note speaker, our keynote speaker this evening. I look forward to learning so much from you. I think you're going to be giving us an insight into what it feels like to be in these boardrooms that, we still feel largely excluded from. So over to you, Mpho.
Thank you so much, DP, for your words. I think unconscious bias is definitely something that we as the BMF are dealing with, and as advocates for transformation, really women empowerment is something that we really take seriously. And certainly from a Gauteng Province perspective, we took a conscious decision that we are going to push for women leadership, and we've got 4 out of the 6 branches being led by women. So definitely that fight is a good fight that we continue with. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we are now moving into the section of the session that we are all really looking for. Before we go into that, let me first just introduce our guest speaker, our keynote speaker. I'm going to read her bio. It's a short bio that we're going to read because we really want to leave it to her to share the experiences, to just get it from her. So today's speaker is Basani Maluleke. She was appointed in 2017 as Executive Director, Independent Non-Executive Director for 2 years from July 2015 at the African Bank. And Basani assumed her role as Chief Executive Officer of African Bank in April 2018. She served as an independent non-executive director from July 2015 and joined the executive team as Group Executive Head of Operations in July 2017. Having qualified as an attorney at Edward Nathan Sonnenberg, she joined First Rand Bank Limited as a member of RMB Corporate Finance in 2005. She subsequently joined the FNB division as the head of private clients in 2011. Basani is a member of the African Leadership Initiative, the Aspen Global Leadership Network, and a member of Council of the University of Witwatersrand. Ladies and gentlemen, I think with that bio, you can just tell that the person that we are bringing here really has extensive experience in the industry that she's leading. And being the first, I'm not going to continue with the first, we all know she is the first Ladies and gentlemen, please help me, welcome Ms. Basani Maluleke, the CEO of African Bank, to give us her opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mpo, and thank you, TASNEEM. Can you hear me?
Yes, well and clear.
Oh, fantastic. So as you can see, my study is quite dark. It comes across very dark on these platforms. I still haven't fixed the lighting. So let's all pretend we are in a romantic environment having a fun conversation. So again, Mpo and TASNEEM, thank you. I think you both highlighted the challenges that we face. So one of my highlights of this year was watching the Democratic convention or the race amongst the Democrats in trying to choose the nominee to run against Donald Trump. And one of the people who was in this race was Elizabeth Warren. So she was a woman in this race, and Elizabeth fought a hard race. She really was super impressive, always well prepared and so on. But as life would have it, she then had to concede and bow out of the race to allow Joe Biden to be the nominee. So in her press conference that she gave when she was bowing out, one of the journalists asked her, Elizabeth, did gender have anything to do with your decision to run to drop out, or did gender play any role at all in this race? And Elizabeth Warren's response was that, this is a trick question, because if I say yes, it did, then I'm playing the gender card and I'm a sore loser. But if I say no, it didn't, then all the billions of women out there in the world are going to ask me what on earth I'm talking about, right? And I think that's the challenge we all find ourselves in. It's a no-win situation. And obviously the same thing applies in the case of race, which means many of us in this room are able to identify with the situation, or maybe on the call. And I think this was the point that TASNEEM made, that ultimately it means that we have, we're penalized 3 times by the system that we're in. And that means that we constantly have to have our wits about us, because there are always people watching. And of the people watching, there are, on the one hand, those wonderful souls who will root for you, the ones who want you desperately to succeed, the ones who will pick you up when you fall and who will celebrate your great moments with you, and sometimes even without you. Then unfortunately, there are the people who are also watching who want you to fall on your face. Some will even go so far as to push you so that you fall on your face. And this makes the road extremely difficult, but not impossible. So I'd like to share a few lessons that have helped me on my journey. The first one is, you can't do it alone. It really takes a village. So my sister is the Deputy Auditor General. So when she was appointed as Deputy Auditor General, my family was super excited. My father was over the moon. So my father, being the man that he was, insisted that we had to have this party. But not only did there have to be a party, it had to be a big party. So off we went, we planned this thing. And everybody we've known in our whole lives is invited, right? So it's the neighbors from the first house we lived in Soshanguve, it's the aunts, it's the uncles, it's the family friends who've been there since time immemorial, it's the people who know you, but who you can never remember. It's the school friends, it's the family friends, it's the colleagues, current and former, so many people. And so I had to give one of the speeches at this wonderful event. And I got up and I looked around me at all these wonderful faces looking back at me, all these people who've been in our lives for so long and who loved my sister so much and who were so proud of her. And my remarks were, watching all these people, my sister could not have done it on her own. It really did take this village of all of these various families around us who made this thing possible. And I was so glad, well, maybe I'm more glad today than I've ever been that my father made us do this. Celebrating moments with the people who've walked this journey with you is so important. It reminds them of the important role that they play in your life, and it reminds you of the importance of keeping them as part of that journey. You never know who's going to help you along this journey. You know that it will take many people to help you, but you never know who it's going to be. So it's so important to consistently keep people who are close to you close, it's important to make sure that people who you meet along the journey, you treat them with respect, irrespective of how they treat you. And sometimes that's really hard, I know. But ultimately, you need to develop and invest in those relationships, because ultimately it does take a village. And the people you least expect to help you, I have found, sometimes do, and then will go the extra mile for you. The second of my 3 lessons is that you must choose the people in your life carefully. So I know we all know this, right? But who you spend your time with matters. So it goes without saying that you must spend time with the people who support your dreams and the people who inspire you and so on. But you really must be deliberate in choosing your friends. So I'll give an example. So I have a friend who I met when we were both in junior school. So her name is Isabel, and Isabel is 2 years younger than I am. And Isabel used to irritate the hell out of me, right? Because she was just 2 years behind me. And you can imagine, when you're in high school particularly, it's not cool, right, to hang out with people who are younger than you. But she always insisted. And Isabel was always the smartest person in school. She always won every trophy, every award Isabel would get it. So she's super, super, super smart. And almost does it effortlessly, which is always so irritating, right? But in any event, so Isabel and I end up at UCT, and we both study law, and that's where we really become friends. And then after we part ways at UCT, she then goes off to Harvard to get her master's in law. And today she's an outstanding advocate, as you would believe. I mean, she's really extraordinary. Isabel, she loves her work. She loves her family. She loves South Africa. She reads voraciously. She loves life and lives it, fully. She's fearless and authentic. Isabel walks with wolves. So as you can see, I deeply admire this woman, and she's my friend. Imagine that. So after I joined RMB, which was my second job post business school, I went to business school. RMB was my second job after law school. So I decided while I was there to go to business school in the US. And I know that decision was in large part inspired by Isabel's decision to go to Harvard, and after that to work in India. So I decided I need to follow this example. And then after that, I traveled a lot, primarily because I realized that Isabel just became such a richer person for all the travel that she does. And today, I read a lot, mostly because I'm trying to keep up with Isabel, and I can never catch up because she reads so much faster than I am, and she's voracious. So the point is this: having Isabel in my life has made me a much better person. It's made me the person that I am today in so many ways. And much as I love and respect and admire her, we are still, Isabel shows up when I need her to show up. So when I'm having a tough time because COVID is getting me down, I know that if I phone Isabel, we'll have a big cry about it, have a glass of wine and move on. I mean, she is fantastic. And in so many ways, somebody who has made such a difference in my life. And that's why it matters, right? Having people in your life who can help you to become better. So it's not just about the people who you laugh with. It's really got to be the people who motivate you and inspire you. And then the last lesson that I wanted to share today is to never stop learning. So, and I know we know this intrinsically, but the more I'm in my position as CEO, the more I recognize that in so many ways, my knowledge and my intelligence can actually be the ceiling of where this organization goes. So my inability to understand an argument means that the argument never gets heard. So I need to consistently be learning so that I'm able to keep up, to inspire, to motivate, to get my team to do more and to do better. But also in a world that is changing as fast as this world we're living in is changing. So we know that 4IR and so on, we don't stop hearing about it, is changing the world. It really is. And the skills that are relevant obviously are IT skills and data science skills and so on. But so you need to know something about all of those things, but it doesn't mean that the rest of us become irrelevant, right? Leadership skills are still important. Empathy remains important. Understanding right from wrong remains important. I mean, look at Donald Trump. So all of these things really matter. And the more that you can invest in yourself in your own education, the better. So I love this idea that the organizations that are going to be successful in the world we're going into now are the organizations with the highest velocity of learning. So the businesses that can learn the fastest, whereas people can learn the fastest and adapt the fastest, will thrive. So the question becomes, where are you going to be on that journey? So I think this is the biggest challenge of our time. How do each of us remain relevant in a world that's changing? So for me, one of the most important things I did in my life, I think, was going to business school in the US. So I went to Kellogg Business School, which is just north of Chicago. And it was the biggest turning point in my life. So Kellogg was a baptism of fire. Here I was, so far away from home. I'd never lived away from home before. At least I'd never lived outside the country before. I'm surrounded by some of the smartest people in the world, in a city I don't know, and in a city where they think they speak English, but they don't. Nobody in Chicago understood my accent and thought I was speaking something completely unfamiliar. So everything was unfamiliar. The academics were hard. There was more work and more reading and more assignments than there were hours in the day. I often thought about quitting. Then it got cold. I mean, this is the Midwest. So when it gets cold, it gets cold. And I remember feeling very sorry for myself, right? There was one day where I was walking home from school in the evening, and I'm wearing, layers and layers and layers of clothing. I'm wearing a beanie, I'm wearing gloves, I'm wearing these massive shoes. And it was just a triple trifecta. There was wind, there was rain, and there was snow, all at the same time. And you're far away from home. It was just such a hard and difficult experience. But once the snow had passed, it all dramatically improved. And the next 18 months were amongst the best of my life. So the point is this, you must never stop learning, but you must take the risks to learn. You must take the risks to invest in yourself. You have to believe that the choices that you make today, hard though they may be, will lead you towards your dreams. You will make mistakes, but they will not be fatal if you keep going, if you choose for them not to be fatal. So Mpho, those are my opening remarks. I hope that some of what I've spoken about will resonate with some of the people in the audience, and that some of them will really motivate and inspire you when things get hard. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I think, yeah, the lessons that you've outlined are really life lessons. Just cuts across industry, different types of people. I mean, never stop learning is something that certainly as a Black woman in corporate, you often wonder. I think you find that the black women have got the highest qualifications. If you were to do a study, you'll find that most of us have got doctorates and stuff. And I mean, I recall just wondering, when does it end? And I think I take comfort in your words around just never stopping to learn and remembering that it moves your quantum of thinking. It's not only about the next position, but it's really around the level of thinking, and really around choosing. I mean, I've got children, so I always say to my son, you can't choose your family, but your friends. You choose. So choose carefully, my son. So that I can certainly attest to that in terms of my journey. So really appreciate the lessons. But I think for me, what really struck me is just around the risks. When you mentioned the risks and the failures, and believing in the choices that you make. But when you said they'll never be fatal if you choose for them not to be fatal. And I think most of us, we forget that it's about the choices, and failure. We can choose to learn from failure, or we can choose to you know, to let it pull us down and not move us forward. And I think I want to just mention to people, please use the chat and the question and answers. We're moving into the question and answers session. There's a nice comment here. I think, yeah, I'm not the only one who's inspired about not quitting. Talking about just the people around you and it being a village. I mean, I am going to say it. You are the first Black female of a South African bank. And not just any bank at all, but a bank that has a rich history for Black people. I mean, if you think about Ndati Richard Mamponya and just the history of the African bank in itself. So just maybe tell us about what that means for you and how you've used this to fuel you to excel even more as a starting question.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mpho. So look, I suppose I've been very lucky. I think that people in African Bank and this, you know, the management, you know, even before I arrived, are all very inspired by the story of African Bank. I remember the man who hired me to go into African Bank, so Louis von Zene, so he was the chairman when I joined. And I remember Louis saying to me at the time, you know, he was asking me to join when the bank was still in curatorship, right? So everybody's thinking about, oh my gosh, African Bank has gone broke. This is a disaster. It must be very, very poorly run. So I go in and meet Louis, and Louis, for those of you who don't know, Louis von Zene is known as the Tsar of banking. So he was the former deputy CEO of ABSA, you know, a proper banker, if ever was a proper banker. So I went to meet Louis, and I'm like, but Louis, why would you join African Bank, right? If I think about everything you've achieved and who you are, surely this is going to tarnish your reputation. Why would you do this? And Louis said to me, but Basani, if you think about what this bank does, it gives loans to Black people where nobody else will. It provides a service that is so valuable and can change people's lives. Imagine if you and I can take this bank and turn it into an investec for low income earners. Imagine if you could do that. You know, and I think just the commitment and the devotion to saying that every South African deserves a fair chance to advance their lives. And we know that financial services is very important in enabling people to rise up from their circumstances, right? You know, without that loan, you can't buy that car that gets you to your first job. Without that loan, you can't get the education that allows you to advance your life. So we know that, you know, financial services is important. And I think the key was, for me, was about joining an organization that understands this, remains committed to it, and we remain committed. So at the moment, our mission, our stated purpose is to advance lives. And all of us buy into it, and we are wholeheartedly committed to figuring out how we grow a business that does advance the lives of our customers.
Great. I think, yeah, advanced lives, that's such a powerful statement in terms of just the purpose. We want to advance lives, and I think the role that certainly the organization plays in South Africa in terms of just banking the low income people. Historically, I think it's one that is really critical, and I think we are rooting certainly for you, and we're waiting to see what exciting things you guys will bring as we move into the 4IR and more into digitization. I just want to check. I don't see it's more just, oh, there's a question that maybe I'll take from the attendees before I go into my question. My next question from Tulane says, my question to Ms. Maluleke is, what does leadership mean to her, and what type of leaders are needed at the moment to move SA forward?
Leadership. In many ways, I think it's a very hard question. You know, I often think about Donald Trump when I think about leadership. And I think of Donald Trump because he's the very opposite of a good leader. And I suppose leadership is about having principles that resonate with your generation, with the people around you, right? That resonate with the time. It's about being motivated by those principles. It's about being authentic, right? So I think if you say you believe in equality, but you don't, that's also not going to work. It's about authentically believing in the principles that are driving that generation, and being committed to furthering, those principles, to living them and making sure that the people that you are leading live within those principles and do the things they need to advance society. So for me, leadership is about service. It's about service and helping them, be it a community or a group of friends or a business, but it's about service to those people to attain goals that are important to those people. And I suppose in terms of what leaders we need today to move South Africa forward, I think it's still that, right? We need leaders who understand, firstly, like deeply understand our problems in this country. So if you must solve the problem that we're actually having. Don't try and solve a problem that you imagine we're having. So you must actually understand what the problems are, which means you have to be very, very informed. You gotta read, you gotta understand our history. You gotta have a vision for the future we wanna have. I think one of our problems is that we have this beautiful constitution. So I'm a lawyer, right? It's a beautiful document with beautiful goals and dreams where we must go. But I think at the moment, they're just words. It's so easy, as I say, to say, I believe in equality. Very different to really understand what that means. To know that for us to have equality, chances are we all are gonna have to sacrifice something. What does that look like? What am I willing to sacrifice to get there? And I think that's what we need our leaders to be thinking about, talking about, and getting South Africans as a whole to have the same picture of what this equality looks like, of what this, alleviating poverty. What does it look like? What is my role? What is your role? And how do we collectively get there together? So for me, it's courage and actually getting things done. I think maybe that's what frustrates me, the lack of courage in getting things done.
Yeah, we had a topic around courageous leadership. I think courage is really important in leading because it means making the sacrifices and going where other people fear. So there's more questions around, so I think critical skills that one has to possess to get to your level and succeed. And another question is around what is your take around the relevance of international experience? Could be educational, work experience, etc.
Raising when Basani's done, I don't have a raise your hand on my screen, so I'm
okay, GPL.
That's funny. So the critical skills, so I suppose banking skills is always a good start. Having some retail banking. As I said earlier, I think going to business school for me was critical. So critical because it forced me to think about really what I want to do. Who do I want to be? Why do I want to be this person? And I think all of those things help you to be grounded in your leadership. Because as Sun Tzu would say, right, in the art of war, first know thyself. So take the time to understand thyself, understand your weaknesses, your strengths, and be rooted in who you are. I think that's really important. And I think business school helped me to understand that. So you can read lots of leadership books on it, I'm sure. But I suppose being in an environment with people from so many different backgrounds really forces you to examine who you are from so many different perspectives. And you see yourself responding to different people. I'll give you an example. I remember, so American students on average were just very American and didn't want to hang out with international students. So you ended up hanging out with the international students mostly. And I hung out with these Chinese students a lot. And And I realized at some point that I actually could not tell them apart. You know, I would call one by the wrong name, thinking he's the other one. It was so embarrassing. And I remember thinking to myself at that point that, you know, we often say white people can't tell black people apart. And here I was, you know, doing exactly the same thing that we so often criticize other people of doing. And I think it's those experiences, right? You don't read about that in a book. You gotta experience it. And so as a result, I think it's about learning leadership in a very active, experiential way, I think is important. Then obviously all the stuff around understanding finance, you know, getting deep experience in the technical stuff, I think really matters. But more than anything else, leadership is about just knowing people. Know yourself, and then knowing the people that you're going to be leading, or understanding how you're going to lead them, which means knowing them, actually. Yeah, I think that was the question. So yeah, TASNEEM, over to you.
Let me unmute first. Okay, so Basani, I think the important thing for me, looking back on my life and reflecting, when you say know yourself, I think that's part of the journey. You know, I often think how much sacrifices I made for my career. And I often think, and I think that my dad passing away this year gave me perspective on the true meaning and purpose of life. And had I had that maturity, would I have done things differently? You know, it's a question that still lingers, but I think it's important as, you know, as a Black woman, you know, you're constantly being watched. You have to perform at a higher level. So the norm is 100% and you like above 100, otherwise you're failing at 100 actually. And I think my question to you is, you know, maybe my time has passed and my one regret is often that I haven't had more children. And the reason for that I know, if I must be truly honest with myself, is for me, it was always, I need to first achieve, you know, this degree, and then I must get a master's, and then I need 2 years experience, and I'm not going to get maternity leave. And, you know, what are people going to think if I say I can't do this because I want to spend time with my kids? And, you know, it's just about balance and what is important. And I respect women who don't view having a family as important. But if one were to just for this brief moment, in this moment, say, well, we want family because ultimately, you know, we may not want a conventional, traditional, get married, you know, type of setup. But for me, as a traditional woman, I think having kids was a huge part of, and coming from a big family, it was a huge part of giving away of myself in a sense. And I had already given those years and they're gone. But I think it would be interesting to note for those who are still during their childbearing years, I'm not saying mine are over completely, but, you know, how do you make those important decisions that you're not going to, you know, everybody says, yeah, just before you die, those moments your life flashes by and, you know, you think, what, you know, was it all this accolades? Was it all this, you know, board positions? Or was it, you know, what is it, how many kids you had? Did you have a quality life? Were you happy? You know, So I think maybe in a long drawn out way, that's my question to you. If you can be in a C-suite where not many of us have the privilege of being, I know people say it's crowded at the bottom and then it's very lonely on top. You know, what is your perspective on that? I think for me, that's important to know. No, not, you know, just in general, not you.
Generally. So that's look, it's a great question. And I would be lying if I said I know the answer. But for me, you know, so I'm not married and I don't have children. And mostly I'm not married and don't have children because I never met the guy who made sense. Right? So I made those choices around that. So then one could argue, yeah, you didn't meet the guy because you were trying to get an MBA. But whatever it is, right? It just never happened. So, you know, I don't know. I think I've done my life just based on what the next thing was. Yeah, sure, what I wanted in the longer term, but, you know, I took my chances when I got them. And I've made the best choices for me, given the opportunities that I had. Now, will I regret it? You know, in 10 years' time, maybe. Will I be thrilled in 10 years' time? I don't know. But I suppose what I believe is that it's never too late, right? So maybe I turn around tomorrow and I meet this wonderful man and I have, no, I don't want to have children. I can adopt some kids. But whatever it is, right? You know, maybe that happens. And maybe you become CEO next year because you meet the person who makes the most sense in the same way that I met Louis van Zeyne. Right? You just don't know what's going to happen. And I think that's really important. But, you know, so I lost my father 3 years ago. And it was after joining African Bank as an executive, but just before becoming CEO. And my father was the world. So when Louis van Zeyne asked me to come and interview to become an non-executive at African Bank, as you can imagine, right? I'm meeting the star of banking. This man is so impressive. And he's like, Basani, I really want you to do this thing. And I said to him, Louis, I don't know, African Bank, it's got all these problems. My reputation, I don't know. I need to go home and ask my father. Now, these words left my lips before I could pull them back in. I need to ask my father. What grown woman says that, right? So then I go home, and the following day, it's a Saturday, Louis texts me and he says, Basani, I wish I knew your father, because if I did, I would phone him and ask him to tell you to take this job. So obviously I took the job. But you know, it's I guess the point is, one, fine, it's never too late. You never know what's going to happen. Two, you must, you know, take the choices or the path that is given to you. As they say, never have regrets. Maybe that's it. I don't know. Good luck.
Yeah, I think the important thing, what you said, is never having regrets. It's a constant. I think as women sometimes we shy away from that question. It's a reality of our life, because I mean, how often have I've heard men saying, you know, or people setting up meetings at 6 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the evening, without thinking about you know, those people that have got to go rush home and cook. I think for us Black women, society still puts us in that, and sometimes it's the boxes that we put ourselves based on how we were brought up, that we must cook. I mean, just the other day, my domestic was saying to me, we were talking about cooking, and she knows I hate cooking. And then I was like, no, he must cook. If he's hungry, then he must just decide what he's gonna eat. It's like, no. Even if both of you are tired, you must be the one cooking. So I said to her, you know, Auntie, don't come and break the rules in my house here. We've agreed things here. And it's really what works for you at that point in life. And that's what I always say to the young ones that I mentor. Say, what is it that you want now, and you just make sure that you get it. And I think just a question, there's lots of questions that I've seen, but there's one that I just wanted to ask that I thought links in with what you've said. One of the reasons people say that women are passed over for opportunities is because they didn't ask for the opportunity, or we want to wait until we feel ready. And I think, I don't know if people know how rigorous the process of being appointed as a director of a bank is. But I just want to know, what are the key takeaways from that process, especially in staying there? Because I mean, people have been asking you, what are the key attributes of a leader, and you've spoken about not quitting and choosing not to take your failures as fatal. So what are the key takeaways from that process and staying the course, and just fully stepping into the opportunities placed in your path? I mean, you've talked about having to first speak to your father, but what really did it take?
So the question is, when are you ready, or how do you make the decision to take the job, right?
Yeah, so what are the lessons in that you can give to us in terms of just making sure that when the opportunity arises, you don't doubt yourself, you are ready, and just stepping into it? Yeah.
I read somewhere, and I'm sure we've all seen this, right? That you should always take a role that you're not quite ready for, so you can grow into it. And I think that is true. I mean, I can tell you now, I was never ready to be CEO. And a lot of people say you don't know what being CEO entails until you're in the job, because you can read about it. It's nothing at all like that. You know, so you're never ready. So there is that. But maybe the bigger question for me is, so you don't know what the role will mean and exactly what it will look like until you're in it. So the bigger question is, who will be the people around you to support you? So as I mentioned earlier, I spoke about Louis von Zehner. Guys, love Louis, right? So here was this man who was going to be there to support me in the role. So even if I wasn't ready and I had to learn stuff, I knew that he would be there and I could ask him the stupid questions. But secondly, you know, you need to quickly figure out what you don't know and figure out how you're going to learn it. So when I became a non-executive, I'd never done retail banking, I'd never done credit. And these are the core capabilities of the bank. So I got there, I realized that my problem was, so I called the head of credit and I was like, you're gonna teach me credit. And I spent hours and hours and hours with this man. And when I eventually joined as an executive, he said to me, the reason that he's so glad that I'm a CEO is because I took so much interest in his area. You know, but I think and no other director did that, right? So I think the key is to figure out what's going to make you successful, and if you don't have what's going to make you successful, how do you get it? So sometimes it means appointing somebody who can fill the gap. Sometimes it means learning the thing you must learn, and you must just figure it out, and you must do it. But I must tell you, I made a horrible mistake in a job I took. I didn't know any of the people that I was going to be working with. I didn't fully understand the job, and it all went wrong. It really all went horribly wrong. So I can't overemphasize the importance of having an idea of who you'll be working with and who will support you, but knowing that those people will actually be there to support you. They can't be there in theory. They actually have to be there to make sure that, not that you don't fail, but that when you need help, you can get the help you need.
Great advice, thank you. Let me just get into the questions on the Q&A panel. Tabi, so I wanted to maybe ask this question, but let's take it anyway. What is the next for African Bank? There was an article a few weeks ago about the bank considering the bond market. Will we see the African Bank soon offering home loans, car finance, and maybe take the VBS approach and embrace stokvels?
So what's next for us? So that article you saw was about us raising money in the market to grow the bank. At the moment, we're not looking at asset-backed lending. So we're not looking to offer home loans and car finance. So we're not doing that, although we do know that a lot of people who take our loans do use them to pay for cars and for home improvements and to kind of fund home loans as well. But what's next for us, or stokvels, we have created a product that we think is fantastic for stokvels, and we're in the process now of marketing that, so that's definitely there. But right now, the core for us is to get our transactional banking product out in the market and taken up. And of course, the key thing in a COVID world is to get as many deposits as we can. And some of you will know that we've done an extraordinary job at doing that. And then of course, to continue to providing finance to people who need it.
Great. I'm going to keep my remarks short because there's a lot more questions now. There's hi, Member Sani. What does gender equity and inclusion mean to you, and how important is it to leadership? This is from Mohali. Yeah.
What does
Do you want me to repeat it? What does gender equity and inclusion mean to you, and how important is it to leadership?
Okay. So I suppose it's about being seen to be different, so being seen to be a woman, but not being discriminated against because you're a woman, right? So don't pay me less because I'm a woman. Don't ignore me when I speak because I'm a woman. Don't overlook my ideas until a man says the same idea. Don't exclude me from decision making simply because I'm a woman, right? So, see me as different, but treat me as equal to my male colleagues. That's effectively what it needs to mean. And that's harder than it seems, right? Because we know that these problems continue, and I still face the same problems. I still face the same challenges. So gender equity is something we don't quite have yet, but it needs to happen. In terms of leadership, so I have the best CIO in the world. So my chief of information, or my chief IT person, is this wonderful blonde woman. And you can imagine, I mean, IT is, if banking is a male world, I mean, IT is worse. And she's fantastic. And, she was saying to me the other day that if you think about COVID and what COVID has done to us, COVID means that we need to be much more empathetic in how we lead. People are hurting. People have lost family members or have lost jobs, or family members have lost jobs. And if you don't lead with empathy, if you don't lead from a space of understanding where people are coming from, it becomes very difficult to lead. And she was saying to me that, if ever there was a time for women leadership to be relevant, this is definitely it. And I think leadership matters, female leadership matters because of that. We're able to see people, we're able to be much more collaborative. And I read somewhere that women are better able to bring different ideas together and to knit them into a complete whole better than men. So I think we bring a very different set of skills that is very valuable, particularly now. So, I only hope that more opportunities will open up for women in the world we're in.
It's so true about women bringing together different perspectives. Women are natural integrators. Think about when you getting dressed and you want a pair of earrings that matches your outfit and a pair of shoes. And I mean, it's a natural skill that women have. So we're natural leaders.
That's true.
This is an interesting one. Dila, I'm gonna skip yours because I think Basani has mentioned some aspects around what's still missing for in terms of the strides for women, and what do you think could be done to improve the experience of being a woman in SA. I think we can maybe revisit if you think we haven't really covered. But there's one question here. You strike me as a fearless and energetic leader who can inspire action. In his book, Ntate Bonang Mohali speaks of lifting as you rise. As Basani, what are you doing to lift others and inspire action in others who won't necessarily be lucky to meet a Louis?
I think many of us meet Louis, we just don't see it. I'm going to tell the story. So I was working in a small firm in 2015 and doing my life. And one day I received an email from a Gmail account. Then I don't know the name. The email is pretty much in all caps. So I read this thing. It's titled Opportunity. And I read this email and I look at it and I'm like, I don't know this guy. I don't know what it's about. I'm out. And then a week later, for no reason whatsoever, I decided to go back to find that email. Then I Googled the guy who sent the email, and it was Louis van Zene. So I think, and I could have ignored it, right, for forever. So I think opportunities are there. One just needs to be alive to them. And the opportunities keep coming. It's not that if you miss a Louis, you're not going to find another Louis. They do keep coming. You just need to recognize them as opportunities. So in terms of lifting as I rise, there are so many different ways of doing that. I think participating in this discussion is definitely one way of doing it. I think, writing personal pieces in magazines or in newspapers is one way of inspiring people. I obviously mentor people within my business. I obviously ensure that we have representative people in our management teams and so on. I make sure that, even in my own management team, my own leadership team, I spend a lot of time with my leaders to ensure that we're all leading in the same way. I spend a lot of time thinking about succession in the business. How do we groom new leaders? How do we deal with diversity and inclusion? So those things, I think, are part and parcel of leadership. You can't not lift as you grow. Being the only Black face in a room or the only woman in a room, that's history. That should be done. I'm tired of that. I'm much more interested in figuring out how we make sure we get more women into rooms, because when you're the only one, you can't make as much difference as when there's more of you. So I'm keen to make sure that we have more women, we have more Black people, we have gay people, we have people from different religious backgrounds. It creates a much richer environment for all of us to grow and to be more innovative in the interest of our business.
Great. I think, I think the 30% rule around how getting, as a critical mass number really works, and I agree with you. Being the only one in the room really is old. I wanted to ask, I think at the back of that question, I'm going to, I really am dying to ask about the imposter syndrome and whether you have ever experienced it, but I think you did touch on a bit. And having been somebody saying you come across as a fearless and energetic leader, I'm shy to ask this question, but I do want to ask it.
No, every day. Right?
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
Every day. I'm surrounded, well, in lockdown, maybe I'm not, but I work with very smart people. And they're really awesome. And it's hard not to sometimes feel like, oh my gosh, how could I have been the lucky one to lead this group, right? Why was I chosen? Oh my gosh, I can't possibly do it. I remember when, in that first month of COVID, no one knew what to do. Every CEO I spoke to was like, this is terrible. There are no answers. We are lost, right? And it was hard, right? You definitely feel like an imposter. Getting people to operate remotely, inspiring people who are operating from such different places. That stuff is hard. And you always feel like you must be doing it worse than everybody else. So look, I think it's inevitable. And I suppose the key is to figure out how to make sure that your team is able to tell you when you're doing it wrong or when you can do it better. Which means you must trust your team. Otherwise, you won't believe them, and they're not going to give you the feedback. But it's I think it's part and parcel of being a woman in the time we're in, to experience imposter syndrome on I think a regular basis. Somebody once said to me that because you experience imposter syndrome, it actually forces you to want to be better all the time. So maybe there's a plus side, right? As long as you don't spend so much time trying to be better that you don't actually enjoy your life. So find the balance.
That's great advice. I just want to just read this because it's really a show of appreciation. This is the second webinar in 2 weeks. I have had the honor of listening to Basani. So this is a real fan like me. Her generosity with her time and insights gained from her experience is indicative of her commitment to helping others. You are such an inspiration, Basani.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's very kind.
Great. So there's lots of questions. There was a follow-up questions around how does one build courage to get things done. And there's questions around just the bank going forward, around offering savings for kids. And one is, I'm going to read just two more and let you respond. Going forward, how does African Bank stay relevant to the needs of Black majority and importantly, clientele? There is a huge backlog for RDP houses in the country, also amongst the missing middle. I think you did mention that you're not moving into home loans yet, but you can, maybe if you want to add some more. And then what are other this one, I think I would like to also just find out a bit more. You've talked about education and continuous learning. What other self-investments have you made as a leader? The person goes to ask about coaching, etc. So I think there's usually a theme around getting yourself a coach or a sponsor or a mentor. So we'd like to just know a bit more around what else we're doing.
So definitely being surrounded by people who inspire you is important. So as I said earlier, my sister is the Deputy Auditor General, so her leadership style is amazing. She's one of my mentors and I learn a lot from her. My father was an amazing leader. So I feel like I learned at his feet from when I was a child. I do have a coach. I've had multiple coaches, I suppose, throughout life. So I think that's important. So I think it's good to have a coach that you're paying, because chances are they know what they're doing and will, you can contact with them to get you where you want to go. And I found that quite useful. But I think also, so I suppose it's the difference between a coach and a mentor, but it's also very important to have mentors. And I've been extremely lucky. So since becoming CEO, I've been able to call on Cesar Ngasana, who was the former CEO of First Round, and he's extraordinary. His experience, both personally and professionally, has really helped me to shape my own leadership style and to think about life and to think about what it means to be a CEO and how I need to behave. I remember bumping into him at a Woolworths one day, and he says to me, "Oh, I saw your interview on blah, blah, blah." And I was saying to him, "Oh my gosh, I hate seeing myself and hearing myself in interviews." He's like, "Well, get used to it. This is your life now." And I think having people who can help you to acclimate to what this means and help you to improve and to get better and to do it because they've been there, they've walked that journey, they've been in those shoes, is really important. So, yeah, I think you need the coaches, you need the mentors, you need the friends, you need the parents if you still have them. And then the last thing that I've done, which, look, it's touch and go, I think, for a lot of people, but it's helped me a lot over the last 3 years, is that I've had a psychologist. So when my father died 3 years ago, so TASNEEM, I keep coming back to this because I can't tell you how sorry I am. It was so devastating for me, but devastating. And so because I knew I was not going to cope with this thing, I just knew it wasn't going to work. I then got a psychologist and said, "Listen, figure out how to help me to be normal during this, because I'm going to fall apart and it's going to be ugly." And so she came up with helping me figure out what grief means and how to cope with grief. It's hard. But because, I was also still in the process of figuring out how to be CEO, she also helped me to figure out how to deal with imposter syndrome. Why do I feel this? She helped me to figure out, she would profile members of my team, right? She say to me, "I think that one's a narcissist," or "I think this one needs this from you. Go and talk to that one." And it was just nice to have somebody who would help me to think through how I was responding to people, how I could respond better. I know it's controversial because people think psychologists, you only go to them when you're crazy. But for me, it's been a godsend. It's been really, really useful, and I would recommend it.
Thank you so much. It's such a gift what you've just told us, Basani. I think because we have this thing that as a leader you must have this fake facade and you must be strong, and we've got a false sense of what strength is. And I think as a woman you probably have experienced that, especially as a woman, and having such a powerful role, experienced just in terms of how people's perception of what strong is and how strong must play out, that then they treat you differently. And I think you probably find that most of the best leaders have help, and going to a psychologist is asking for help. So thank you. I think it really warms my heart, and I think it's how you get courage to lead. Just responding to the question that was asked in terms of how do you get courage, is that asking for help and not being afraid to be vulnerable as well. I think you mentioned you have to surround yourself with great, excellent people, but how those people then want to work for you for free is when you become vulnerable, when you make yourself vulnerable. I feel like we're at church and we're preaching here. I'm going to just look for more questions. DP, I don't know if you want to, maybe you have questions while I look for them.
I think, thank you, Basani. I'm with you in your loss. I mean, you with me in my loss. I think, you know, definitely for many of us who come from different dinner tables, because we need to acknowledge that we're not all, and I think women in particular, it's not that we are less intelligent, it's that we're less networked. So we don't have, you know, where else would we meet these Louis other than in, you know, exclusive golf clubs or wherever you meet them, you know, shop at Hoolies situation. So I think it's important to acknowledge, as a South African society and as the demographic majority, we are not going to, you know, the people on this call is actually not the people who need to specifically hear these things. There's a more vulnerable group that we actually need to try and go and fetch and bring to us. Because I think it's important to acknowledge that for me and my family, for example, I was the first child to finish school. I mean, this is coming from my father's generation of 4 siblings. Then I'm the first one. And because so we're talking about this cycle of generational poverty. And equally there's generational wealth. So I think for BMF, we stand for a strong Black middle class. We know that poverty is not going to alleviate itself, and government is not going to take us out of poverty. And business, certainly, as capitalists, they need to. I mean, you would know, coming from a bank, you need to satisfy your shareholder. So, as a strong Black middle class, and we're not saying we want to be trapped in middle management. We want our members to. I think that's what the CE report spoke to, that we're still trapped in middle management largely, not only as women, but equally as Black men. So, you know, we really need to acknowledge that our dinner table conversation is going to be not marginally, but hugely different. And I like that you're still grounded, but you're saying, you know, surround yourself, even in your community, there's going to be leaders. And I often ask myself, and I have to really, you know, when I stand in a room physically, say to myself, am I the cleverest person in this room? Because if I am, then I'm not in the right room. You know, and different contexts will dictate when you need to be the cleverest in the room, right? But for your own growth, you don't want to be the one, you know, that your ego gets stroked all the time because now you're leading. How do you then grow? You can't now climb out of yourself and say, well, so I think it's important what you say, and a lot of what you say resonates, but also equally, I think we need to then, as the successful minority in the country, when we do get to these socially, you know, that we share that space, that we say, I mean, you do it by giving your time this evening. You know, stop saying for free, please. People don't value for free. Psychologically, it's, you know, it's not a good thing. Because this is why samples don't get used. You get it for free. But had you bought something, we often find ourselves using things because we paid for it, not because we want to, just because there's a principle that you've paid, so you attach in your mind a value to it. So I think, you know, it's very valuable what you're doing this evening, Basani. And I often say to people, when you ask other people what are they doing, that is actually, you should be reflecting, what are you doing? Don't be interested in what Basani is doing for other people, but what are you doing yourself for others? And it speaks to exactly what you're saying about living a life of service, living, you know, getting lost in a higher purpose. And for me, you know, those are important attributes to have just on a basic humanity level. This is not for me a color issue. This is not a gender issue. This is just human to human. You know, what are we doing to improve our humanity toward each other? I mean, we have a saying in our country called Ubuntu. I mean, similarly in Islam, we have something called Ikrami Muslim. And even though it's Arabic and it means what you wish for your brother, but I mean, brother is a neutral term. You wish upon, so what you wish for yourself, you wish upon your brother, sister, mother, father, whatever. So you must never want, you must want for others what you want for yourself. It's like you'd never wish ill upon yourself. So I think,
No, for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that is important. Personal manifestos as a human being that you must live, and a lot of this, Basani, is, you know, part of wanting to give. I think is even though we have natural leaders in our families, our parents, our grandparents. On my maternal side, I come from a very rich, strong woman lineage. The women are strong. The women paint. They pick up, you know, they do physical and they do mental and they do emotional. And so it's very hard to be vulnerable and to acknowledge that you're allowed to be, you know, seeking permission when you should be. I often say to Mpo in the BMF, stop asking me if you can do something, give yourself permission. And often, you know, I think that's the best advice that you know, unsolicited advice. It's like, I always say to people, you know, advice is like salt. You don't give it unless someone asks for it. You don't go around sprinkling salt on people's food unless they say they want the salt. So, you know, unsolicited advice, but yeah, give yourself permission and don't wait to be asked or told or guided to do stuff. Sorry,
and I suppose give yourself, and I suppose give yourself permission to fail, right? So if you're going to give yourself permission to do stuff, then also give yourself permission to fail, and know that if you do fail, either know who will help to pick you up, but know, you know, be confident that you'll find the strength to get back up again. I think that's important.
Thank
you. I think we've got about 10 minutes to go before we close, so we're moving towards a close. I see there's there's still a few more questions. I'm going to ask you. Secondly, it's a follow-up question, really. She wants to know, how do we grow the bank led by a Black woman and at the same time make it one of the best in the country? I think that is a question. I think it's just a call to action and a willingness to support. So I'll let you answer that and then move on to the last three questions, and then we move to close.
I see my colleague Tato Sopeng is on the call, so I may need to ask her to give her opinion on this. But you know, if you are thinking that you are growing a bank led by a Black woman, it's got to be more than just that, right? We've got to be giving you products that matter to you. We've got to be creating an experience that is relevant to you. You've got to be getting value, right? If I'm not creating value, and if we as African Bank are not creating value, I can't possibly expect that we will get customers. So I do think that we're creating value. I think Tato, who's on the call, who is in our IT Exco, I think they're doing an extraordinary job in terms of creating an IT platform that creates amazing customer experiences that will enable us to continue to grow the bank and deliver value to customers in the future. So I'm confident that the bank will be successful. It may well be that, you know, you don't want to bank with us, and that's okay. But I can tell you now, we offer the best savings rates of anybody. So if you're needing to save money for your kids, for yourself, for your parents, for whoever it is, you're not going to get a better product than what you will at African Bank. I mean, that's just true. And the fact that we've been able to grow our deposits by over 150% every year for the last 2 years, I mean, you can tell we're offering a really quality product. So, and it's not only that product that's quality, right? So I think our transactional product is quality. So if you believe that we have something that would work for you, please come and bank with us. But certainly, you know, if you don't think that we're offering value, send me an email and tell me what you think would work. As I said earlier, we definitely are not going to be offering home loans. And I know for a lot of people on this call, that is really important. And I guess it does mean that we will miss you in terms of giving you that kind of credit. But for other products, you know, I would be pleased if you'd consider us and if you take a look to see if we can offer you value.
So I think we've got about 7 minutes. I'm going to ask you this because I think it's a fun one. And I must say, I'm a stalker. I'm your stalker, Basani. So I'm no, I've seen you de-stress. So how do you de-stress? What activities do you participate in to maintain work-life balance? I've seen you at the gym.
So I do go to the gym, it's true, just not during COVID. Funny enough, so I still train with my trainer here at home. So he and I do video training twice a week. I've gone back to running, so summer's back, and I love being on the road. For a change, I'm actually well enough to run. So my knees are cooperating, my ankles are cooperating, so I'm really enjoying being out. I meditate every morning. Highly recommend that. So many different apps to help you meditate. Such a brilliant thing to do. And then I sleep well. I think sleeping well, eating well, and exercise are the key. Oh, and you must have family. So just as Bing's point, either family you make yourself or family who adopts you or who you adopt, but people who love you. I mean, I think that's critical to life's journey.
Great, thanks. I think we're going to move to a close. We've certainly, I've certainly really had fun and learned a lot, and really just being validated. And I think a lot of the people that are on the call also are probably going to work away validated in terms of how you know, how they've been living their lives and the choices that they've made. So we really thank you. I say for free because you could charge us, but you're not charging us. But the best things in life are free, right? DP, yeah, please, let's accept this gift. It's a gift that we are getting. So I'm gonna ask then Ntuleng from the Menko of Johannesburg branch to just give us a vote of thanks and appreciation for your time.
Good evening, everybody. As Paul mentioned, I am Ntuleng Phahlele, and I'm part of the Joburg branch, and I'm currently serving as treasurer on the Joburg branch Menko. As part of the vote of thanks, first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for putting the event together. I think it's very important to thank them first. Without them, we wouldn't have been able to put together the event. And then secondly, to our keynote speaker, Ms. Basani Maluleka, Ikenzengopu, for giving us your time tonight. And I'd like to thank you for two things. First of all, three actually, but the first two are kind of linked, where I thank you for pouring whatever you've poured into yourself, in that I believe that one can only pour out that they can only pour out that which they have poured in. So in order for us to be able to drink from this very rich well that we drank from tonight, you had to first go and pour into yourself, and that requires a lot of work and a lot of effort. So I thank you tonight for taking the time to pour into yourself so that you can pour out into us. And then secondly, then thank you for just pouring yourself out to us tonight. I do believe a lot of us, we learned a lot and we were equipped. And then lastly, I just want to say that, you know, whenever I attend these sort of things and I see women like you or people like you, and I'm like starstruck, I'm like, oh my gosh, I wanted to be my mentor. And I think a lot of people always have that reaction, and reality is there's only one of you and there's like way too many of us. So you can't be mentoring each and every one of us. So I just want to say to everyone else that's having like the same moment that I'm having now, that, you know, I believe that I don't really need to have your number, I'll know you personally in order to consider you as my mentor. Where, you know, another thing that I can do is follow you very closely. You don't even have to know that I'm following you very closely. Just always notice, you know, just, yeah, be very observant of how she thinks, you know, how she reacts, the sort of values and principles that she abides by. And I think that way she's mentoring you, even though it's not like the traditional direct way of mentorship that we know, where you can have a one-on-one with her. And then thirdly, to Paul, our facilitator, thank you so much for facilitating the dialogue. And then lastly, to our guests, thank you for joining us. I do hope that everyone was thoroughly equipped. I believe that, yeah, you need to spend your time efficiently. Where okay, I always use the example of when I go to church, I always need to make sure that when I leave out of there, I need to leave different. And if I don't leave different, I might as well have spent that hour elsewhere. So I do hope, and I need to be intentional about it myself to make sure that by the time I leave there, I leave equipped. So I do hope that each and every one of you guys were very, very intentional about making sure that you came out of this dialogue with something where, you know, we weren't talking. And to another point that Ms. Maluleka made as well, in terms of our government, you know, where we're saying that we need to have people actioning the things that we learned today. Can we go out there and action all of those things and not just archive them somewhere and not actually use those things? So yeah, thank you so much. Have a lovely evening and a lovely week further.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on, Paul. Thank you so much, Tato. Thank you for encouraging me to do this. And mostly I was going to put you on the spot simply because that's what leaders do, right? They throw you in the deep end and hope you rise. But TASNEEM, wonderful to meet you. Good luck with your process of mourning. I know it's going to be a tough time, so know that I hold your heart and mind as you go through this. To everybody on the call, thank you so much for allowing me into your homes and allowing me to be part of this process. There's nothing easy about being a woman, and definitely nothing easy about being a Black woman. Know that you're not alone. Know that it's possible. And know that you have a lot of people who want you to be successful. So thanks again for having me. Good luck with COVID. Stay well, stay safe.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.